Dee.
We're two divorced.
Well, I'm still separated.
Okay. Working parents.
We talk about all the things you get to deal with when your marriage ends. Like
Co-parenting.
dating.
Running a household all by yourself.
How early is too early for a good hard drink?
Or a glass of wine. And how do you keep it all together after everything fell apart?
This is
Demarried Life. So Dee, happy almost 1 year anniversary of the pandemic. Exciting, so exciting.
Right.
I made it almost the whole year without a serious accident and managed to break my wrist earlier this week. And I was surprised at how often you use both your hands to do something. And the thing that I miss the most is messy buns. I cannot put my hair up in a messy bun. So I think I'm going to go get that. Well, my boyfriend tried. Emphasis on the word tried and failed to do that for me. So I think I'm going to go and buy some just like old school banana clip things and just kind of scrape it out of my face because it's driving me bananas. But
time to get your kids into doing hair. I remember when I was a kid, I made the mistake of showing my mom that I knew how to French braid. And my mom used to just have this mane of hair, like kind of past her shoulders. And then I became her French braiding person. And
you were employed.
Yeah, employed without pay. And I had to do that. Oh my goodness. I don't know how many times. Thousands.
Yeah, no, my mom always had this short, like efficient mom haircut.
Yeah.
But it was funny when I broke my wrist, I remembered my mom had broken hers when I was really little. And so I was like, oh, it's like the same thing. She's like, well, not quite. And I'm like, what? She goes, well, you were trying to save your dog falling down the stairs. I was trying to save a case of beer. And you know, my mom, she's not a big drinker. She's very very sweet. And so hearing her, she's like, yeah, I totally bailed and wiped out, but I saved your dad's beer. And he was so happy. But it's so hard to get babysitting. You guys were both really little that I just went and partied with the broken arm because I was so desperate just to go out and have fun. And then I went to the hospital the next day.
That sounds about right.
Right? Which leads us into our topic today, which is single mothers by choice. We have two incredible podcast hosts joining us from the United States who are also single mothers by choice. So we're going to be bringing them onto our Zoom call here to join us and learn all about what that's like. And not just what that's like, but dating. What's it like to date? What's it like to parent? So many questions.
I can't wait to talk to them. And as I was saying to you before, Erin, when we were getting ready for this interview, I was thinking I think for a lot of people who are either just fresh out of a relationship and they've got kids, or they're kind of contemplating a split with kids, I think a huge anxiety for people is like, how will I be single as a divorced person with children? How will I have a love life? Like maybe I shouldn't have one. How am I going to do it all? And I mean, who better to ask than single mothers by choice who
made the choice and are doing it. And they're, maybe they'll say they're not killing it.
Yes.
We'll find out, but it seems like they are. Hera and Aisha, the Mocha SMCs, who are the co-hosts of the Mocha Single Mothers by Choice podcast. Aisha and Hera, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Well, thank you for having us.
So a bit of a spelling lesson. SMC. What does that mean?
SMC stands for Single Mothers by Choice. And so strangely, this is kind of a contested definition in our community, but essentially the way we define it is mothers who choose to be single mothers while they're planning to have kids. So this could be by, a assisted fertility like IUI and IVF, or adoption or what have you. But the whole idea is that upon planning for your child, you are expecting that you are not going to have help or a co-parent or anyone else financially responsible for that kid.
Purely solo endeavor.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Versus Erin's definition that she made up of single mother by chance, which is when
that's
the
a thing, right?
Yeah,
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yes.
What is that in contrast? What's a single mother by chance?
A single mother by chance is a woman who becomes a single mom as the result of a relationship not working or a divorce. So the by chance part is that it was not planned. Whereas, as a single mom by choice, from the moment you decide I want to have kids, that's like the 0 stage, then you go and you proceed to have kids. You know ahead of time that you are going to be the single sole provider for a little human forever.
Oh, forever and
Yeah.
ever. Amazing.
Yeah.
I knew this was a thing a little embarrassingly from a movie, the movie Baby Mama. I'm sure you both heard of it or seen it. Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. But it's the sort of the premise of that movie is this woman decides that she's not going to wait around for a partner. She's going to go ahead and get a donor, raise a baby herself, and then it turns into a rom-com. Spoiler alert.
Because your life, I'm sure, every day inside and out is a rom-com, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, just... real rom-com.
Oh, totally.
I've learned from learned from listening to your podcast episodes that doesn't quite follow the arc of the movie necessarily.
No. I mean, I sometimes feel like it's almost like a movie, but it wouldn't be a romantic comedy. It would probably be just
straight
like
up comedy.
No, seen as earlier this week, I held poop in my hand. Probably not a rom-com.
But I love that. I think all 4 of us have probably at one point held poop in our hands. I have. But not recently, I will say. So you each have 2 children?
Yes.
And what are their ages?
So mine are 7 and 5.
Oh, busy. Okay.
Mine are 6 and 20 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got sort of the school age.
Mm-hmm.
Hera's closer to that freedom, a little more like.
Man, I don't know. I have like, I always describe my kids as like my older daughter is the princess in the princess movie, and the little one is like the villain in her princess movie. And so, like, just as I was getting to the point with the older one where like I could put cereal out and like put milk in the refrigerator and sleep, I decided to have another one. I don't really know what I was thinking at the time, but I'm definitely feeling the pain.
Do you tell them about your spread?
My spread. Okay, so I've got 3 daughters as well. 11, 6, and 2.
Awesome. See, you understand. Like you almost got freedom, and then you were like, "Oh, snap."
Yeah. And it was a similar thing where the first one was the princess, the second one was something else, and
it's all in the eyes. For those who can't see her eyeballs right now, they're very wide and terrified.
Yeah, but I mean, it's fun, right? But the poop in the hand, I'm pretty sure I've been there in the last 7 days myself.
Yes, I can still
God,
sense the warmth.
Yeah, it takes a while for that to go away. First the smell and then just the sensation.
I'm going to tell you guys the story actually, because you'll all be able to relate, I'm sure. So it was like a diaper. It was like a poop in the diaper situation. And she hadn't gone for a couple days. So I was like, I knew it was going to be intense. And so then I'm like, oh, well, I'll just like, flip it into the toilet. And then I went to flush the toilet and the toilet got clogged.
Oh, awesome. Was that bad?
That is what we were dealing with. And I was just looking at it, I'm like, how? And look at her and look at the toilet. And I'm like, how is this my life? So I had to get out the plunger and then like,
it's moments like those as a single mom where I'm like, I really traditionally don't go with gender roles, but I'm like, damn it, right now.
Yes. I need for the really disgusting poopy situations.
Exactly. Like I can handle the spiders, right? I can handle like all kinds of like bug issues per se, but like poop and vomit, ugh.
Right. There are some dirty jobs.
Yeah, is there no one I can call?
That could be a service.
No,
that could be a service. Let's just keep some side hustles in a list here. So tell us about your journey, how you made this choice. What led you to making that choice? Because I know your journeys are slightly different.
So I started out the traditional path. I am a typical rules girl until I am not. So I was married. I married my very first partner. I met my ex-husband in college and fell in love, didn't look back. We got married after being together for 6 years. We were married not quite 5 years. So in total it was an 11-year relationship. I was very young, very naive. And so when my love of my life told me, you say you want to have kids, and if you want to have kids, then I have to be the head of the household. I have to, make all the decisions. And so I whispered over to my girlfriends, like, do men really want that? Like my girlfriend was like, just say yes, just say yes. I was just like, yeah, sure, you can have that. Right. We got married and I then established a career. And then I'm like, hey, I'm ready to have these kids. And he's like, remember that whole head of the household, decision maker of everything? That's me. And I'm saying, no, we're not having kids until you decide to give up your job and be, the primary caregiver. I'm like, no. And he's like, well, you told me I could have total control. And I'm just like, did I really mean that? Did you really mean that? And so we struggled for quite a few years, and my job, relocated me. And I'm like, I'm going to go with my job. And so he's just like, you go with the job, you might not have a marriage to come back to. And so I'm like, I think I'm gonna have to risk it. So
Good for you.
took the job, and my marriage never really recovered. We went through therapy. He still wanted total control. He still vowed that he would never be primary caregiver. I traveled a bit for work, and he's like, if you get pregnant and you have this baby, you need to figure out a way to take that baby with you. And so
Oh
I'm
my
just
God.
like, I don't really know what to do with this.
If you hadn't divorced him already, we would be all over you right now.
Well, and that's kind of what we struggle with as SMCs. It's like, because some moms come to the space never having been married, right? And so they've got this idealized version of what marriage is, and having that partner there who's going to help and support with the kids and your career. And it's just like, I'm just like, yeah, I'm happily content. I know what that would have looked like for me, having the partner that I did, and I could have easily, gotten myself knocked up, slipped up, but I was, as always, the rules girl with boundaries. And I'm like, hey, we're getting down tonight, let's make a baby. And he's like, no. And so, so we did that a few times, and it just got to be so demoralizing for me and my soul. Like, every time my husband would put on a condom, and I'm like, there goes another baby. Right. And so eventually it just got to be really toxic. And so we were seeing a therapist, and the therapist is like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to kind of wait for the dust to settle, to kind of let our emotions settle for a bit, and then see where this is. And the therapist was like, why? And I was just like, you know what? You're right. So then I conversed with his family, and his aunt told me, like, you know what? You're a beautiful woman. Why don't you just leave him alone and set him free if you don't want him anymore? And I was just like, wow. Yeah.
Profound.
And how old were you then?
We got married at 20, when I was 24, I think. I was 29 around the time that we got divorced. And so.
And when you made that choice, was there that voice in your head going, will I have a chance to have a kid if I let go of him?
I mean, yeah, so it was like 50-50. It was totally bittersweet. This was the love of my life, right? So my heart was breaking as I was making all of these decisions and looking, because you spend so much of your life trying to get to a point where you have the marriage, the house. Now it's just the kids and the dog that's missing. And when somebody tells you, no, you can't have that, and then you have to let it all go. So now you're back to zero, and that's 11 years of your life, good years, that you can't get back. And so I'm like 29, divorced, and I got rid of it all, right? All of the tradition, right? And all of the, the respectability politics of, a child in wedlock, to kind of wing it. And I winged it for like maybe 10 years. So from 29 to about 32-ish, I struggled with, didn't really struggle. I enjoyed dating, bought a house, got my career off and running, traveled a lot, but was still dating. And, and I can tell you the stages of my dating where, I kind of went from dating the guys who were like, yeah, we're just playing and we're casual. And I'm like, good, cool, that's where I'm at. And then I started dating the guys who were my age, and we're just like, I was like, yeah, I kind of want to have a kid. And they're like, yeah, we already have our kids. We don't want any more kids. Go, take it.
That is a mothering moment. Love it. We love seeing the various ways that our moms are able to tell the kids no. Mm-hmm. Go away. What was it? Paw Patrol is popular. Yeah. Like, go watch one more episode. Whatever it takes. That's great. Okay, so then the guys who had already started their families.
The guys who had already started their families was like, no, I got my kids. I don't want any more. So then you're standing there like, what are we doing? And then I started dating the guys who were older than me and that were just like, yeah, my kids are grown. I don't want to do that anymore, but let's go. And I'm sorry, I skipped a step where you have the guys who are like, I have my kids, but I'm open to more, which is like the biggest lie ever.
That's the biggest lie.
Right? And
I love you're both just like, nope, that's not true.
It's always funny when you see them. They're like in their 40s, like they're pushing 50 and they're like, I want more kids. I'm like, no, you don't. Come on.
Yeah,
like,
you're just saying that to cast a wider net. We found that too, Erin, hey, on the dating apps where it's like, there's I forget what the options are, but it's like have kids, don't have kids, or
I'm open to more, have kids and want more.
Okay.
I'm very clear on my dating profile. Have kids and do not want more.
Yeah.
Don't want yours.
The shop is closed. But but yeah, so you did all that dating. So anyway, I cried my heart out to my family and until one day my stepmom, who was like 60-ish, mid-60s, she was just like, well, why are you crying? Why don't you just go get yourself a donor and have a baby by yourself the way Halle Berry did? And I was just like, huh? Because she was very church going, just very traditional. And she's just like, stop crying and go do something about it. And I was just like, you were so right. And so it took me on like kind of this 2-year journey. So this was about 33, 34. And I didn't start trying for my daughter until I hit 37. And so then I knew that I was trying to have a baby on my own. So now it clicked in my head that, I didn't know what it was called, but I was trying to have a baby on my own. And so I went through asking the friends, can they donate? That didn't yield anything.
Whoa, what is that like? How do you phrase that?
Yeah.
I have this cup.
Yeah.
And this magazine, if you have a few minutes, like, how do you frame that ask?
So, I mean, it frames, friends in, rabbit ears, is, kind of like the guy who wanted to date you, but for some reason it didn't work out. So I had a couple of those.
Still a good guy though.
Still stellar guys.
When they offer, they're not actually thinking cup. They're thinking like they want to do
this. They just want to go right to this. But yeah, got it.
They're not thinking cup.
That's what it really was.
Okay, no. I had that group of guys. Those I would not call friends. Those I would call predators.
Trying to knock women up?
Yeah, that would no, not women, me. Or
just
Hera,
you,
or
just you specifically,
right? Yeah. Like you've been in their orbit, they've been checking you out for a while. It's like, you want a baby? Come here, I'll give you a baby. And it's just like, no, not from you.
It sounds like some sort of a god complex. I will make life for you. I can give you that gift because it's such a sacrifice for them.
Yeah.
But I have had a couple of guys that were genuinely stellar guys. The attraction just wasn't there. So it's just like, yeah, I could see myself co-parenting with you. Could you do me this favor? And so it was like the first time I asked the guy, I was like, can you do me this favor? I'm only going to ask you once, and then in 2 weeks, if this is something you want to do, contact me, shoot a smoke signal in the sky, and then I'll know that this is what we're doing.
I like there's a waiting period. That's very smart, having the 2-week waiting period.
Well, because they got to think about it.
I feel like that alone is the beginning of a rom-com.
The movie starts with, will you? Yeah. Let's do the waiting. So that's a lot. And I don't know about for you guys, the number 35 was always thrown around. Like there's nothing like I was pregnant at 31 and 34 and that term geriatric pregnancy.
Oh, it's awful.
Are you kidding me? It's like, do we call Viagra geriatric dick medicine? No, it's not.
Right?
We would never use the term geriatric. It's a very gendered thing where they say geriatric pregnancy. So I know some people that number 35 is sort of thrown into our minds in terms of, if you dare to try later, it's going to be really bad. So I think about women in marriages that may not be working who are scared to leave because they think that's their last opportunity to have a kid.
Yeah. Or they push a relationship that under any other circumstances they know is like not the one, which is kind of what happened to me. I had extremely messy and terrifying. I was pushing 30 and in a fairly abusive relationship. And I became a single mom by chance. 2 weeks after my son was born, I left my abusive ex in a pretty traumatic and terrifying situation. Um, Went through the whole horrible custody situation where you learn that you really have no control over whether or not your kids are safe if you are co-parenting with a psychopath. And unfortunately, in my case, my son was murdered when he was 15 months old by his dad. And so afterwards, I went through this period of sort of like feeling like I was on the fringes of society, because once you're a mom, you don't like unbecome a mom, right? So similar to like, if you can imagine, like for me, like your brain changes, right? Like your sense of smell changes, your taste, like everything in your world changes when you're becoming a mom, right? And so I remember afterwards just like looking for him, because you know how like when you're always conscious of where your kids are, right? Especially when they're like toddler age, because little toddlers are like little people trying to kill themselves, and you just have to try to make it stop, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So like you're constantly in tune to like, well, where is he? Like, is there like a socket that's, so like my mind was on hyperdrive, and I was like, I spent so long being terrified of being a single mom. And then when I was a single mom, I realized the only thing that was really hard about my situation right then was my ex, right? Like the
variable that you
mommying
can't
part,
control.
exactly. The mommying part, yeah, like it's hard, right? But like I could control that, and it was like a different kind of hard, right? So a few months after my son, I had kind of been thinking about it while he was still alive, but it was like, like if I want more kids, how am I going to have kids? But once he was gone, I was like, you know what? Like, I want to be a mom, and I don't want my desire to be a mom to unnaturally speed up a relationship. And especially knowing that, like, because I had that trauma, like, I couldn't imagine getting into a relationship and trusting someone fast enough to then want to have a baby with them, right?
Yeah,
And
two very different timelines needed there.
like I was just like, I'm not, and I don't even know if I'm going to be in it in the next like decade, right? And then I'm going to not be fertile anymore, right? So when I told my family, I was like, hey, I'm going to do this by myself. They were like, is this the trauma speaking? Maybe you should take some time to grieve, right?
Yeah.
And like, even down to like my fertility doctor, he was like, you're 31, you're pretty fertile. Like, don't you want to mate for Mr. Right? And I'm like, you're not hearing me. Like, no, I don't want to co-parent, like ever, ever, ever. And so I pushed through. I ended up having my older daughter, who I call my rainbow baby, because she saved my life. Like I was in a fairly dark place before I had her. And it was like, all of a sudden I was like, wow, like I feel like I am human again, and yeah, I still do a lot of like advocacy, and it's sort of how I tell people I parent my son, by like trying to protect other kids. But just the power of being able to kind of take my fertility into my own hands, and also the safety, the feeling of safety that comes with like, hey, I am never going to be a family court again, right? So it also like allows me to continue to advocate in that space, because I can talk to women who are going through all kinds of trauma. And to a degree, like in order to advocate, you sort of have to like do this death march through your own trauma to help other people. But the thing that sort of grounds me is knowing that I can come back to my kids and be like, you are safe, we are safe, we are never going back there, right? And so I love being a mom, and I love being a single mom by choice. And what I always tell people about like the differences is like, if you can imagine a Venn diagram, right? There's a lot of similarities between being a single mom by chance and being a single mom by choice. But of the differences, like we don't have the complexities of trying to manage some other adult's personality, schedule, or any of that stuff, right? But we have our own unique challenges. Like Aisha and I always talk about choose your hard, So it's like parenting is hard no matter which way you parent and what you decide, but it's like we chose this kind of hard.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I had to read it a few times, and then it clicked, and I got it. I'm like, oh, I like that, because it's so true. It is hard. People have all sorts of opinions about what it must be like to, be raising kids as a divorced person, or be raising kids alone, or this or that. And people, people have these ideas, but it's like, it's all hard.
Well, and people, I notice in single mom groups, like people try to play the oppression Olympics, they're like, well, my job is harder because like I have to deal with my co-parent, and then somebody else is like, well, at least you have Saturdays off. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, look,
Yeah.
it is all hard. It's just different hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
If you're doing it right, who has the time to look over in somebody else's backyard and say, I have it harder? I'm just like, no, it's just hard. Everybody just has a different reality. And it's like, let that person who's like, I'm a single mom today because my husband's away at work, let them have that moment, because for that day, it is all them. Let them have the moment. It takes nothing away from you to be like, girlfriend, take that. If that's going to make your day easier, claim that and move on, because I'm going to be moving on with my day. And so
Well,
yeah.
also there's things that like married folks will deal with that is hard, right? Like, and I'm just like, they have a total right to complain, right? Like, I don't have to manage another adult's personality or like an adult relationship when I get home at night. I can like put my kids to sleep and have a glass of wine and popcorn and be like, I'm good, right? And if I want to deal with another adult, I get to choose to do that. And if I don't, if I want to be by my damn self, then like I can also do that.
I loved that post that I'm not sure which one of you authored that post, the strong microaggression post on your blog. And maybe this is a good time to just mention your website, mochasmc.com. Is that right?
Yes.
It's not. Yeah.
Yes.
mochasmc.com. They've got some great, links to the podcast episodes, also resources, and then some great blog content, including what you just mentioned, which I wanted to bring up, which was that sort of the flip side to, and definitely something that I think a lot of people don't notice until they find themselves in a situation where they're no longer in a relationship, that, there is sort of that time that's freed up, that emotional time that's freed up if you're not invested in a relationship that's, challenging.
Yeah. And we don't want anyone's pity. Like, like imagine being at a park and someone's like, oh, you're so strong. I'm like, for what? Being a parent? Like, you're a parent too? Like, why am I all of a sudden like this superhero of a mom?
I love when it's the married people who look at us like, oh my God, you got divorced. Oh my God, you poor thing. And then you like look at their partner and you're like, okay, you go home with that. But yeah, the comparisons, people feel that need to compare. I don't know if, Aisha, when you got divorced, I went through a thing where a lot of other friends were like, oh, our marriage is great. Everything's great. Everything's so good. And it's like, okay, why are you announcing that? And then people are like, watch out, because it's contagious. So I'm like, it's not contagious. And then Dee's marriage broke up.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Speaking of contagious though, question for you two. Being involved in this community, this single mothers by choice community, have you found that is sort of a contagious idea in and of itself? Because I think for some, maybe haven't even considered like, wow, I have a job, I've got myself pretty well set up, like maybe I can do this.
I will say that I have had conversations with friends that are, wonderful people and still relatively were young-ish at the time, like, early to mid 30s. And I would be like, and I wouldn't necessarily have the conversation. I would be the living manifestation of that conversation. Like, hey, so what is he saying about marriage? What is he saying about kids? Do you want kids? And it would be like, yeah, I want them. And I'm just like, well, you guys need to, start moving this along. But I've had friends that are just like, I don't want to do what you did. I don't want to do that. Like, it's just too hard. And I totally get that, but then I also am the one who's silent as they talk about, oh, well, he has his kids this week and, I'm number 3 on the list. And so I just have to wait, or like, going through the rotation of the dating and being hopeful and then having it dash. And it's just like, and then, what I do at the end of that is, I go back home and I hug my kids and I'm just, blissfully happy because I'm out of that roller coaster, that turmoil, until I decide to put myself back in just the dating part. But I'm no longer dating, to have a baby, to get married, to somehow complete me, right? And it's just like, but I watch my friends struggle with that. And every now and then, I will whisper, or they will whisper to me, like, tell me again about that IVF thing, tell me again about, freezing my eggs, but it's still fairly taboo, because it's like the woman with the cats. Like, nobody wants to be single with cats. I would never get a cat while I was single because I didn't want to be the
Do
cat
any
lady.
single mothers by choice have cats? Because I
Yes,
feel
they
like that
do.
would be
Yes,
probably.
they do.
So I will also say, like, our platform isn't just for people who have like decided that this is their path, right? And like Aisha and I will both be the first ones to say that we're not like SMC pushers, right? Because I do think that like
you
this
don't
life,
need them. Get them
right?
out
Like,
of here.
yeah, like this lifestyle is not for everyone. And so oftentimes we have many women that'll come to our space and they'll be sort of in that phase where they're like, okay, I'm getting to that age, right? And this and that and the third. And so I think our goal is to arm them with the knowledge that they need to take their fertility into their own hands, right? And I think also once you realize that there's like that this is an option, that there's power in it, that also I think empowers you to choose better relationships and realize that like, okay, the relationship I'm in is probably not working, and it's okay for me to leave, because even if I don't decide to be an SMC, I know that that is ultimately an option if I like don't meet someone else, right? And instead of like hanging on to that person who ends up being like a complete psychopath, right?
Yeah, and then you've wasted 10 years.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
Nothing good to speak of at the end of it.
Right, exactly. And like we're also like not man hating. I think some people are like, oh, they must hate men, and it's like, no, we love men. Like I hope to one day be with a guy and have a really healthy relationship to model for my kids. But I think that we all understand that any person that we date is going to have to be very comfortable in their manhood and not be intimidated by somebody who is very independent, because choosing this path, you have to be independent. You have to be able to make decisions and be okay with the fact that there's not going to be anybody else there who is responsible for these babies.
And let me tell you, that is hard.
Yeah, we want to talk about dating because we both listened to episode 4 of your podcast.
So
and when you start
good.
talking about lactating on a
The
date,
struggle is real.
I'm so waiting to go dating. I'm still nursing my daughter, and I'm like, I need you to hurry up, because I would like to eventually, once the world opens back up, I would like to be able to date and have,
Didn't stop me.
Right. No,
Yeah.
but I'd love to hear like how you're navigating it. Because, so anyway, I have had guys, and so, in the community, like when you are dating, the question is, well, when do you tell the guy that you're either trying? When do you tell the guy that, there's no dad in the picture? When do you tell? I usually tell, I'll feel it out, whenever it comes up. So most recently, a gentleman, a beau who's interested, was like, is there a dad in the picture? I said, no, I use a donor. He's like, did you use the donor, or is it just a guy that you're calling a donor? And I was just like, no, went to a sperm bank, got a donor. And so, and I swear, almost each chunk of time that goes by when we revisit the conversation, he's like, are you sure you use a sperm bank?
does he need the receipt?
Pretty sure the doctor showed me a vial with a donor number on it. And so those are interesting conversations.
I try to avoid that conversation for as long as possible, because I feel like there's so much drama behind like why I did it. And like the ultimate next question is like, well, why did you do that?
Mm-hmm.
And so like, it's not one of those things where on date one, it's like, well, there was a psychopath who, like, that's not the kind of story you want to get into on the first
you
date.
don't want to
right?
be that girl.
Yeah, like I don't want to be that person. And like next thing I know, the guy's coming home like, you'll never believe the story I just heard, right? So I typically don't disclose it, because to me it's like, my conception story is typically not very relevant. When it typically comes up though is like, when people are sort of asking about the co-parenting situation, because I think many single parents who are dating, they, even if they end up having their kids most of the time, there's usually like some time when they don't have their kids, right? Where their ex has their kids.
The reprieve moments. Yeah.
Exactly. So like, that kind of gets a little bit awkward, because like sometimes guys will be like, so do you always have them? And I'm like, yeah,
Always.
I always have them, right?
Well, it's finding that line between like when it's too early to tell, but then it's too late to tell, like that
Yeah,
in between
totally.
where it's just at the right time, where it's not like, why didn't you say it sooner?
Yeah, like it makes dating like it's almost like higher stakes, right? Because for me, when I go on a date, this is like expensive, right? So I either have to like hire a babysitter, or I have to like spend political capital with family or friends, right? So I'm going to be really pissed if I'm on that date and like dude has like, pictures from 10 years ago on his profile.
Which happens. It happens all the time.
All the time.
Or worse, he told you he was 6'2" and he's 5'7",
like,
and it's
exactly.
like, dude.
Any false advertising, and it's costing you money.
It's so true though, because it's babysitter, it's like maybe the cab, it's the whatever you spend on the date, or like you said, using up a favor with family, then all for something that's like, it's like, I'd rather go hang out with a girlfriend. I know I'm going to have a good time.
Exactly.
Versus,
so like I've gotten to the point where I will try, especially during like non-COVID times, I'll be like, look, I am not committing to dinner because I don't want to spend, like, I don't want to have that awkward moment where you're like, I don't actually want to eat with you. Sorry. Leaving,
I am not ordering food.
I'm not ordering
leaving.
food. Right. So like, I'll try things like, hey, let's meet up for coffee. Right. Cause you can drink your coffee really fast and then be like, hey, sorry, got to get to work. Right. And
just
like,
burn your tongue and run like, oh,
exactly. Like, so like times when like, I'm not actually spending something. So like kids are in school or kids are in daycare and I can sort of pre-vet the person without, committing, investing. Right. So like during COVID times, maybe what that'll look like is like, let's go for a walk, at lunchtime. And then, I can just be like, oh man, my boss is calling. Sorry. I gotta go.
I love you've got so many excuses ready to go. It's obviously
Totally.
that you've been like, there's a repository for a reason. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Some of these guys are gross though. Like it's just, I mean, I'm very shocked about getting back on like the apps and like you'll see a dude take a picture in front of a urinal and you're like, is this a joke? Like,
it's like, did you wash your hands?
did they not see that there's like legit a urinal behind them?
This was
like,
the only background option available.
Right? I'm just like, that's gotta be a joke. You have gotta be shitting me. Like, and they're like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, damn.
But I love the idea of separating, if you take the fertility piece out and you take the babies out of it, finding someone for you as a woman, as an individual who's not looking for a dad, you're looking for a companion, a partner, a relationship that's about you and him, not about, creating kids and all of the stuff that comes with that. I think that, so how did that change what you were looking for sort of before you became mothers by choice? And then now, like, how does that change the ideal partner?
I found it liberating.
Well, definitely liberating, but I had to go through phases of figuring out what was going to work for me because I early on when I had my first daughter, I would date guys and they would be like, "Oh, there's no way that the world would see her as mine, as something that you and I could create." And I'm just like, "Ooh,
so what?
No." Right?
Who
Exactly.
invited you to that party anyway? Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's just like, ooh, that's real presumptuous that that's what I would want. Like, yeah, no. And so then I started thinking in terms of, I don't really want to cohabitate with a partner, right? And so my ideal partner would be someone who has their own place. I have my own place and I keep the two, kind of separated. Eventually I'll get a better job and I, will have a repository, for a sitter and all of that stuff. But I really don't want my kids to be uncomfortable because now they have had me and only me for 6 years, by then it'll be 10, 18, so at this point in my life, I think I've made the decision and come to terms with, I'm not going to cohabitate with anybody that I date. We might take vacations together with the kids, but I do not want to blend households. And so I have my household, you have your household. That means you have to be a fully established and actualized adult. You have to be fully self-aware that when I say, no, I can't do it right now, my daughter is struggling with something, that you are okay and you can go play with your own toys and your own friends, right? And, because there is the codependency that comes into relationships, or are you moving in because you love me or because you love the fact of having to split rent 50-50?
Which is so sexy. Tell me more about splitting expenses, baby.
Well, you want to know what's really sexy? I had the guy say the sweetest thing to me. He's like, "Can you make me the beneficiary on your life insurance policy?"
No, dude.
So nice.
I nearly melted. Yeah. So there are those.
I'm already thinking about when you die so that I can get all the money.
Exactly. And I'm just like, we're not even there yet. Like, we're not even at the Netflix and chill stage. And you want to be the beneficiary stage. Like, how does that happen?
That is a new one. I haven't heard that one yet. That's a new one.
Yes. Yeah.
Like no grown-ass man children.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, to Aisha's point, it's like you need somebody who has their own life and their life doesn't need to revolve around yours. Like, I definitely want somebody who wants to spend time with me, but I had this one ex who it almost felt like he was always in competition with my daughter. Like, he would come over and he would just like suck the life out of the room, and they two of them would fight. And I was like, hey, listen, dude, like, she's a kid. She's 3, like, you're a grown man. You need to just take a seat. Right. And so ultimately the relationship broke up for, many reasons. One of which he made the assumption that he'd be adopting my daughter if we got married. And I was like, wow, that is really presumptuous.
That's bold of you.
No. I love all of these offers, unsolicited offers for major roles in your life.
Daddy. I am very clear with people about the fact that I am not looking for a baby daddy. I'm looking for a partner, and my kids are my kids, and my kids will always be my kids. And if my kids decide that they want to be adopted someday, it will be because they bring like a very well documented case to me and make the case themselves. It will never be like a guy.
They'll choose you.
Yeah,
you won't choose them.
And that's the thing. It's not going to happen just because you're dating their mom. Like, take a beat,
So I will say I found a really interesting thing that happened once you stop dating for marriage and children is that you suddenly attract all the men who want to get married and have children, right? Suddenly
you're a challenge. All the other ones are like, yeah, let's do it. But you're a challenge. They got to break you down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So suddenly it's like, well, I want to marry you and have babies with you. And it's just like, no, I'm done with that. That is not going to happen.
And they think we're kidding. I was like, look, we had this talk like very early on. I told you that this is not what I was looking for. And they're like, yes, but don't you love me? Not like that.
Why are those two things connected? Those are not connected things. Oh my gosh. I love the, tell them no and they'll never want you more. That's just one thing. Like, good Lord, that's what you tell the women who do want to get married and have kids. Say no, just say no. But the assumptions that get made, like, just all these assumptions based on so little, based on what, like, sort of societal expectations and the way things used to be. Like, it's so interesting that our expectations aren't evolving at a more rapid pace when so much of our world is so drastically different, yet we still have these really old-fashioned ideas about marriage and kids and all these sorts of things that I think all of us at some phase have experienced somebody sort of, I don't know, I have looking down on me for being divorced, going like, ooh, you should have made your marriage work.
I think it's also interesting how it kind of flips these assumptions and stereotypes we have about men and women on their heads, because then as soon as you separate romance from family, which is essentially what you two have done in your choices, now all of a sudden you're attracting these people who want to, move in with you and adopt your kids, when it's like, you'd think that like men would be like, sweet, I can just have my place.
Yeah, my ex kept leaving his shoes at my place and like leaving things like toothbrushes and like I was like, what the hell are you doing? Why are your shoes at my front door? Like,
did you do a sweep
something
before he leaves? It's like, no, you forgot all these things.
I was like, this is so ridiculous.
Well, Hera, because it's like, oh, you want babies? You want to take care of people. You want to take care of people. Here I am. Here I am.
I was like, no, I don't want your smelly shoes at my door. Take them with you.
But I think that's part of the difference is that you want to be with someone versus needing to be with them to fulfill some biological imperative that we women only have so long to fulfill. I think it's just so fascinating that we at the same time we've got men going on Tinder just trying to get laid really fast, and women do it too. Whoever does that all the power to you.
Yep.
But being presented with the fact that no, thank you, that's not what I want, and still this, where does it come from? Like, where does this urge come from to like, it's almost like they want to domesticate you. Basically,
yeah, I also
right?
think it's a misnomer that only women want that. Like, I think a lot of men want, because like society is still very antiquated in their beliefs of like, what makes a person whole. And so I've met a lot of guys who, even if they come to this realization later in life and they're like pushing 50 and still think they're going to get married and have kids, right? Like they they want to check those boxes too, right? So when they meet someone that they really care about, they're like, well, why not do this? But like somebody who's been through any level of drama is like, well, let me tell you why not, right? Like there's a lot of reasons
here's
why
a few
not.
ideas.
Exactly. But yeah, if they, and I also think a lot of times men will approach marriage as like they do want to be taken care of. And it's not that we don't want to be taken care of in a relationship. It's just that like, I don't need anybody to financially take care of me, right? And I don't want to financially take care of a grown-ass man-child either, right? And I don't want a guy who needs me to do that.
Is that a factor in the dating though too? Being successful and being financially stable and men being uncomfortable?
You'd think it would intimidate some.
Yeah, that
Oh,
intimidation
totally.
thing. Yeah.
But I also think that the great thing about it is I think that, we discussed this in our space a few months back where a woman was worried. She was like, if I do this, am I going to turn off some men? And I was like, yes, you will, but you will turn off the ones that you don't want anyway. Yep. Right. Like you should never shrink yourself to make yourself more attractive for someone else. And so if they can't handle all of this, then like they should keep moving because
you didn't want them anyway.
Exactly. And like I've met many men who aren't intimidated by the fact that I did this, and some that are like, oh my gosh, that's really smart. If I did that, maybe I wouldn't be having this problem with my co-parent, right?
Enter single dads by choice. Is
yes,
that a thing?
exactly. Oh, it is. Right? It is to a lesser extent. It is, but like it's harder. And I do actually, my heart goes out to men because
it's hard when you don't have
harder.
the oven. Like the oven is pretty key.
It becomes ultimately more expensive. I mean, I do know that there are men who choose adoption, because that's a thing that's more approachable as an option. But I mean, I also know guys who have used a surrogate and gone that route. It's just extremely expensive in comparison.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got a guy friend who I am coaching, talking through a similar situation where, he is mid 40s, realize he wants to have kids, and then, is dating younger women. They're like, I don't just want to be an oven, I'm not just a baby maker. And I was just like, well, have you ever considered doing it on your own? And so I think that's still kind of far out there for guys to consider. So he's thinking more along the lines of, well, maybe I give up on the biological child and then I just, date a woman who has kids and can still, get my parental fix, I guess, by helping her raise her kids. So it is a tough conversation.
Isn't Anderson Cooper a single dad by choice? I'm pretty sure he is.
Yeah, I can never remember if he's got.
I think he is.
I think so.
I mean, it's already. I mean, we're in the year that we're in, and it's still what you guys are doing is still groundbreaking to many people. So yeah, for the men then to admit I want to be a father, I think is that that's a whole other level. Like when will that be finally normalized? All of this, and so I love that you two are out there talking about this stuff and advocating, just educating, not trying to brainwash people against their will. But I think this is the kind of stuff we need to be talking about because there are so many other paths. And for so long, we've heard these messages, and the fact that you guys are just making it work and making it happen and separating those things, it shouldn't be mind-blowing, but it is mind-blowing. And it's empowering, I think, is the biggest thing. As more and more women are financially independent, we can start thinking about what we really want in our lives and what we need, and not expect one human being. No one can be one thing to everybody, like one thing to you. So being able to separate those things is really compelling and really something I think a lot of us need to think about.
I think it's also important to remove the stigma from single motherhood, right? Like no matter how you became a single mother, it's like, okay, no, not all of us on welfare. We're not all angry and like, struggling to survive.
Well, and as Black women, what is that like for you? Because there's so many negative stereotypes that need to be just ripped apart. Are there a lot of assumptions made when you go out into the world as a single mother?
I mean, I think for sure, like I've had people assume that I'm on welfare, and I'm like, well, that's, there's nothing
Thanks for
wrong
that person
with having to be on welfare, but I'm not, I've also had, I was at a work function and I was pregnant with my second daughter, and a male coworker came up to me and he's like, so who's the baby daddy?
Inappropriate.
And I was like, are we really having this conversation at work? And I was like, well, why would you ask that question? And he was like, well, I just wondered if there was somebody I had to beat up. And I was like, another really strange assumption that this was somehow not consensual, but okay. But yeah, I think there's just a lot of negativity. There's a lot of negativity around single motherhood in general, regardless of race. But I definitely think that for Black women, there is a stereotype that is perpetrated by the media. You know, a lot of the movies you see, like struggling single mothers, like, you know, all kinds of drama surrounding the stereotype. And so I know one of the things that Aisha and I are hoping to be able to change with our platform is just make people realize that no, this is not, this thing that you may have heard about is not reality. And there are, you know, there's diversity amongst single mothers, and many Black single mothers are doing just fine.
Yeah. For me, you know, I have quite a few of my sisters are single moms, and you know, and this was I had to actually do some relearning myself because I came from, you know, what was considered a respectable, traditional, you know, relationship situation where had I had kids, me now being a single mom by chance would have been totally acceptable in all of its ugly dysfunction, you know. And so for me, I tell people I feel like every day I ripped happiness out of somebody's arms and I'm just, you know, reveling in it because I feel like my life could have been so much different had I not been brave enough to take this leap of faith, right? And so when you know, I'm so busy with my head down, living my life and just trying to make a great life experience for my girls and myself and have this extraordinary adventure myself, that what the world thinks really doesn't bother me. And you know, to the extent like I don't get that at work. I'm fully out at work as a single mom by choice. I've had friends from work listen to the podcast and it's just like it just is. And I haven't had any of the bad backlash. I haven't had, and you know, I like to say that I have resting bitch face when I have these conversations, but I think it is almost like it just is. Like poof, I appeared, I had 2 kids, and that's all that you need to know. And I don't hear whatever else might be said behind my back or whatever, you know, poo poo, except for the one married friend who's always on the playground, like, oh, you're so strong. And I'm just like, oh no, girlfriend, you are so strong. I said,
No,
at
you're strong.
8:30,
I don't
you
know
know,
how you do it. Yeah.
right. So you asked earlier about the strong being a
The
microaggression.
strong word. Yeah.
Hera and I, we co-wrote the blog post because it's like for me, I've got that friend, and I know that one friend represents a bunch of friends that are just like, oh my gosh, you're so strong. And I'm just like, at 8:30, my work ends. My little humans, they go to bed. I don't have to worry about whatever else someone else is bringing into from their workday, from their own dysfunction in their head. You know, at the end of the day, it's like if I want to Netflix and chill, if I want to clip my toenails, you know, do a spa day, put my hair in
Eat
curlers
pancakes for
at
dinner.
8:30,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
right, a bowl of cereal, like at 8:30, my job dealing with people ends if I want it, you know. And so for me, there's a lot of peace that comes with that, you know. But when I looked at my friend and she's just like, you know, she wants a better career, you know, she wants, you know, more balance, especially in this pandemic. Like in this pandemic, it's a shit show, you know, it's all on us. But then to have it all be on you and to look in the next room and see that person excelling in their career while the kids are crawling on you while you're trying to have a conversation, knowing that that person should be shouldering half the work and you're sitting here really, really struggling, but don't want to rock the boat and hold that person accountable. That's a lot to hold on to and to deal with. And I don't want to be around when that explodes. And so, you know, to all the people that are just like, you're so strong, I'm like, no. Because for every person that's like, you're so strong, I don't want your life, there's other person that's just like, I'm so glad I have my life, but girlfriend, you in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Run.
Yeah. Well, and I think the key thing in all of this is people get so caught up in the how and the why and all of that stuff. All that matters, are the kids healthy and happy? Are they loved? Are they safe? All of that stuff. That's all that matters. Who cares how they got here? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
They're here. We're happy. You know, like similar to the strong word I got the other day was, well, there's someone was listening to the podcast. She goes, well, you and Dee actually sound happy. I was like, we are like amidst a pandemic, all that, shit show, exclusions. But yeah, like we are. And yeah, and I see the gender inequity that's happened during this pandemic and how far back women have been set as that's a whole other conversation. But to sort of be able to sort of separate yourself from that somewhat and not have that additional burden. And Aisha, you said peace. I think that's a key word, having that peace and having your kids in a peaceful situation. Yeah, that's the ultimate goal. It's not about marriage and history and what's supposed to happen. It's about what's right for the kids and the peace and happiness of the parents involved. And if that's one parent, so be it. But peace is far greater than trying to check some boxes that are way out of date.
Absolutely.
Well, I will say, I listened to, I forget, might have been one of your earlier podcasts episodes where you were talking about, I think you two share a therapist, right?
I also, Dee went and the results were good and I needed to learn from it. But yeah, we love therapy.
But I think, because I will get people like earlier in my divorce days when I was still dating, people would be like, you're not bitter. And it's just like, well, what is there to be bitter about, because I think there's if there is a right way and a wrong way to do divorce, like, you get divorced, that's horrible. But, also take care of yourself, right? And heal yourself, right? Because hurt people go out and they hurt people and you carry it around, and that's just not good for anybody. And so yeah.
Well, we are coming to the end, sadly, of our time here. I feel we could talk all day.
I know.
It was such a pleasure to speak with you both today. Again, you can find Mocha Single Mothers by Choice, Aisha and Hera. Lots of amazing information and resources, and just a fabulous podcast. Thank you both for creating that amazing podcast and all that you do, and for being amazing women. Just human beings.
And generous with your time today. Really, really appreciate it.
And generous with your time. Thank you guys so much. I know we all have a million things to do, so have a lovely weekend.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, you too.
Thank you so much for making the time to listen. We know you have way too much going on. If you can spare a little more time though, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at demarriedlife, or visit us at demarriedlife.com for all of our episodes, articles, and lots of other great ideas for living a post-married life that isn't a total shit show. See you there.